Welcome to episode 33 of What Chiropractic Doesn't Cure, Stories of Innate podcast. And this is a special one because if you don't know, the human spine has 33 vertebrae. And it's also special in chiropractic because Stephenson's textbook, he talks about 33 principles of chiropractic. So for this special 33rd episode, I wanted to have someone who really embodies the science, the art, the philosophy of chiropractic. He's my chiropractor. He's also an exceptional speaker, so I'm looking forward to this. He's shared at Dynamic Essentials and other places, and he's just a really deeply affectionate and kind husband and father. He's annoyingly good at chalk art, so I have to put that in there. If you see chalk art from him, it's just always like, what? You're just blown away. But I'm so grateful to welcome Dr. Ryan Dopps onto the podcast today.
I've been watching this thing rise and who you brought on here, and I got to just start with gratitude and just tell you how proud I am of you for what you've created here, and just the message is so principled, and you've got a really good thing here. So I'm honored to be on here. I've watched my friend take off and do some really amazing things, and so I'm proud of you, Jenna.
Well, thank you. I appreciate how you've mentored and supported me, my family. So I'm really excited today because we always share stories. So I want to know from you, what story do you want to share today? What story of chiropractic do you have on your heart?
Well, I've been been through some valleys lately, right? So I think the message I want to share today is really about exactly what your podcast is called, right? Chiropractic doesn't cure anything. So I think the thing that I've been focused on lately is how symptoms are a friend. And I think in principled chiropractic, a lot of times we dismiss them. And it's just been on my heart a lot lately about how amazing the human body is, that we have these relays of symptoms that alert us into the disruption of our innate intelligence, right? The disruption of our life force, the disruption of our soul. I had a thought flash on Sunday where it was just like I was kind of people watching, right? And I saw this guy that I know that has some health issues. And as I saw him out in public and just kind of observed his posture, it wasn't like I was evaluating him or anything. I just saw the deviation of his spine. And as I interacted with him and he told me about medications that he was taking because of this heart thing, I just had this very clear layer of like, we either maintain it or we go into problems, and then drugs offset that deficit.
Yeah.
And it's just that simple, right? If medication is out there, it is for chemical interference that's blocking the innate intelligence, right? And I've just been stuck on that lately. Obviously, with everything that has gone on with Denise and her passing and being, front seat with that, the symptoms that you observe in that time are rather important, and to be dismissive of them as a principled chiropractor. And I'm not saying that everybody says that or that we should do that or even that that's a thing, but so much in chiropractic, with principled chiropractic, it's, I don't want to take care of your symptoms. I just want to adjust you and let innate flow. And while that's 100% true, the observation makes us a better clinician,
Yes.
And have that insight.
There is an element, like when we say God sees the heart, man sees the outside. Sometimes I think we say that as a negative thing, but it also is a positive thing, an affirmation of, I can see what is on the outside, and the outside does inform us on what's going on inside. So the symptoms inform you as a healthcare professional what is going on the inside, but what is on the inside is what is causing that outside. So even when we talk about our appearance, what is happening inside me and my mental health and my physical health and my gut health is going to inform how I present myself to the world. If I'm in stretchy sweatpants and a dirty sweatshirt and I come in to get adjusted, you're probably going to be like, hey, I sense that something is going on.
Everything good here?
Everything good? So, yeah, I think that there's so much to be said. Like, we don't have x-ray vision. And even x-rays, you can see so much more, but the symptoms, the appearance, the presentation of posture, it does so much to inform us. So I think that's a really great observation.
Absolutely. I've said for years that if you were to visualize right now somebody who's in a depressed state, right? Typically they're not upright and tall and proud, right? They're usually sunken and off. And so if a chemical change in your body can express as a physical manifestation of changing my posture, I think the other way has to be true too, right? If we maintain our posture and we maintain our spine and our health and we have the ability to be upright, that has to change. It definitely changes your brain chemistry into more positive, promoting chemistries that are good for the body and that resonate. Because now, what's funny is like when that bone slips back out of place and the pressure starts to get on that nerve, the slumping forward, the leaning forward actually moves the foramen and opens it up. And so it's an interesting, I think, practical thing that people's posture is going to be bad as long as they're subluxated. And the self-correcting of trying to sit back up it's just not going to work because your innate life force is shut down because of that misalignment. So you go back into a slump mode in order for adaptation, right? You started with Stephenson, and I think I want to jump into that for just a second, because in there he talks about, and Pete Amlinger says this so good. I love it when Pete drops this. So Pete, if you hear this next time you speak, I want to hear you say this, because he's got such a good flow. It's essentially in Stephenson where it says that the innate intelligence never makes a mistake, right? And when it appears that it's our judgment on how we're interpreting it. I heard Santos say something very similar just yesterday or 2 days ago. I was listening to one of his old talks, and it was exactly that. Like, we need to be clear on the adjustment so that innate can do what it wants to do, not what the chiropractor wants it to do. So if we're adjusting for pain, or if we're adjusting for heartburn, if we're adjusting for anything, that the intention, like, it's not wrong to go after that, because that's a symptom, right? Because you're looking for nerve interference. We're not treating the heartburn with Pepsid, right? Managing symptoms. We're going after correction of cause. So it's not wrong to go after that, but to adjust in order to alleviate the symptom, I think, is where we get into problems, because at that point we are trying to dictate what innate needs to do, when what innate needs to do is what innate needs to do.
And how hard is that? How hard is that when someone we love has something we would very much love to address? We would love to fix, we would love to treat, we would love to cure.
That's the beauty of the lasting purpose mindset, right? Is that you give just to give, you love just to love, you serve just to serve, with no expectation of anything in return, right? And that's very true with people coming in who can't afford care, to your loved ones suffering and going through something. Like, the ability for Denise to return the favor of what we all did to help her through that battle, that there's no way she could repay it, right? So in lasting purpose, we all gave, loved, and served her through her final years, months, whatever. And it makes it so damn beautiful, so beautiful. That's how I rationalized it in my mind. It was like, no, this is lasting purpose right here. More than anything that I've ever done before, it's lasting purpose.
Yes. So this morning, as I was getting ready for this call, it's cold out. So I was like, I should put on a jacket before I leave the house. Looking at different ones. Usually I wear like a very oversized men's coat, and I wanted to look nice today. So I grabbed a leather jacket that has a big rip in the sleeve. So I don't usually wear it out. It's sentimental and I want to get it fixed at some point. But I thought about, I know that jacket has been with me so many times. So I reached into the pocket because I thought, there's, and if you're watching the video, there's this restaurant card from a special date my husband and I went on in France. And I was like, yeah, but that card is in there. Why do you need to see it? And I felt that innate nudge of look and see what else is in there. Just put your hand in. And what I pulled out is a movie stub. And it's a movie stub from Hunger Games, November 2014.
Oh, wow.
A double date that my husband and I went on with you and Denise. And so in that way of giving and loving, serving Denise the last couple of years, could she give back? Well, honestly, in her free-flowing state of love that she is now, she gives me the movie stub and says, hey. And that is really, what we're talking about, like expression of life. Are there limitations of matter? Maybe to this human physical form, but this is what is beautiful in chiropractic as well, where yes, you are touching bones, you are affecting the nervous system, but it's so much more than that. So tell us a little bit, why are chiropractors talking about mind and soul and not just the body?
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's a good point. But you go back to just the foundations, right? And BJ poem "The Truth" and the bigness of the fellow within. He says that chiropractors work with the subtle substance of the soul, right? And that gives me goosebumps just saying it, right? Because it's
Yeah.
like the power that we work with isn't just a physical thing. It's not about just laying somebody down and whacking on them. I know you've seen it before, but my diploma hangs at the foot of my table, and I keep it there as a reminder that title that I hold of Doctor of Chiropractic is not just a mechanical technician that I lay somebody down and whack on their sore spots, right? It hangs there as a reminder to me that I am a teacher of chiropractic, first and foremost. And chiropractic isn't just the physical side. It is the physical, the mental, the emotional, the chemical. It's the vitalistic philosophy that encompasses the entire body. And we can have really great things happen in medicine when we have these high specialty degrees that have high specialty, maybe not degrees, but designations. And you can do really great things when you get specialized, right?
Mm.
If that's what is needed, right? Because medicine is the study of disease and the things that cause a person to die, where chiropractic is the study of health and the things that cause a person to live. So if we're going to look at the more life we have, the more life expression we have, it is that subtle substance of the soul being expressed. Like I said, we can drill down and get to a very specific problem if that's what's going to kill us at the time. And again, that's not a bad thing because we need that triage care, right? Paramedic, a firefighter. I mean, just so amazing how responsive they can be in those high stress environments. Working with the subtle substance of the soul is probably a little bit easier, right? Because I can make a gentle adjustment and then we step back and we watch the body do the healing. But I guess the answer to your question is, why do we talk about it? Because that's who we are, right? VJ said that it's about the chiropractor sits in the middle to reconnect man the spiritual to man the physical. Physical being all the physicians, the nuts and bolts, the spiritual typically falling in some type of religious setting, right? Of being some type of clergy or priest or whatever it is, rabbi or whatever. And we get to sit in the middle because we take that life force, that expression of the innate intelligence to the physical matter. It's
Yes.
fundamentals.
And it does become a question of how we view humanity, how we view what is life, because
Right.
in that sense, then we are admitting that we are more than just this body.
Yeah, but how amazing is it that just this body and just the five senses that we have, how much we can interpret our reality and then project our reality forward, right? The only way we know what we're doing is through our senses. Like my Wi-Fi is ripping through my house right now. I just don't have any receivers to pick it up and do anything with it. So that we're gifted with these five senses that we get to interpret and take in data. And each are so, I mean, we don't have to go over the five senses, but like they're each so unique and so amazing that maybe smell and taste kind of overlap a little bit, but it's just wild, right? It's wild how we interpret our reality. So then through those sensors and that data that comes in, our nerve system can process it. Our innate can make adaptations to it and cause a better expression of this physical tissue. I don't know. I think it's
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, you really think about it, right? Like you said, it's cold, so my body shivers and it does all these things we take for granted, but it's really quite fascinating.
Yeah. And even in the sense of we almost limit ourselves by saying there's only five senses, in the fact that maybe in a Western civilization 2024 way, we have elevated science and hard data so much, where even I think about other time periods and cultures where art was raised higher or philosophy was raised higher. And I think the balance is really where it's at. But just the fact that if we take out the sense of intuition, if we take
Mm-hmm.
out that gut sense, is innate a sixth sense or is it the master of those senses? But for example, my husband being a firefighter, he has talked about this and he's heard other mentors in the fire department talk about this, where arriving on a critical scene, the first thing that they should do is really pause, take in that sensory information, let their innate process it, chew it up, and tell them, I got a gut feeling,
Yeah.
or I smell it. But like you said, we aren't necessarily consciously processing that in our prefrontal cortex.
Right.
It's bigger and deeper than that. We might
Mhm.
not be able to say, I know what to do because I smelled it. I heard it. You just know this is what you're supposed to do. And taking in all of those senses, I think that's the strongest point for people to understand what innate is, or even when they say, oh, maternal urges or
Mm-hmm.
migrating monarchs,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
where it's like you don't have to have a study, you
Right.
just know.
It's in the knowing. Yeah, Sigafoos always talked about that. It was in the doing that you figure it out, right? It's not in the plan or whatever. He would always say, funny one, right? Is that the proof is not in the pudding, right? The proof is not in the pudding, it's in the eating of the pudding, right?
Yeah.
The pudding can sit in the fridge and rot. And if the truth's set in there and we didn't do anything with it, right, it wouldn't do it. So it's like you're not concerned with the spirituality itself or the spirit, like of like what it's going to do. It's the nature of it. It's the compromise of it. It's the release of it that we're interested in. It's
Yes.
not needing to dictate how it's going to work, right? It's knowing and trusting that it is going to work always. Now, my judgment of what work means is my own thing.
Yes, which brings up the point when people say, oh, I don't believe in chiropractic. It's like, okay, on a very clinical biomechanics sense, it's like, well, there's really no arguing with reduced nerve flow to
Mm-hmm.
an organ, to a muscle, to a tissue, to a gland. I don't
That's
feel like there's
right.
arguing with that. But, where you're talking about that trust and knowing is really in that innate intelligence to do what it does best.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a hard question, but has your trust and your knowing in that innate intelligence doing what it does best been shaken? And where have you gone with that? Because I know mine definitely has.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. How do you go, I mean, how do you go from, yeah, highly successful, high volume, like we were doing everything right. We were eating correct. We were exercising right. And then Denise gets handed this nasty diagnosis and it did absolutely like, for the first, I don't want to say for the first year, but it also coincided, and I mentioned this at DE a little bit, that it also coincided with COVID, right? Because her diagnosis and she had her primary tumor removed March 5th, and then the world stopped March 8th, you
Yes.
know?
So, can I back up 1 second to tell
Yeah.
people what was her diagnosis at that
Yeah,
point?
thank you. I'm sorry. So we came back from China with the ICA's ambassador program, and her stomach just wasn't right. And so we started some cleansing and we started doing the things that we knew, aloe vera juice, and I mean, all the things, right, to help aid the gut and heal the gut. And obviously, we're adjusting her and whatever, right? So we're doing all the things. And then as it comes down at the end of January, she's got stage 4 colon cancer. And that was a huge shock because again, like I said, we felt like we were doing everything right. In my close circles, as they should have, I got a lot of crap for being a vegan, right? And for being plant-based. And it's totally fine, right? I've got thick skin, I can handle it. But we did that because I had a very close friend die of colon cancer at 35 when I was about 10 years ago. So I was 30, 32, 33. And at that point, I started doing research on it, and it made sense to limit processed foods more and to make these shifts, right, with our diet. I think we were ahead of a lot of the trend with it, which
Oh, yeah.
because it got really trendy, right? And it's about the time we kind of got back out of it. Anyway, you've asked a very important question, and I think that the answer is absolutely. I got shaken. I got shaken because I thought we were doing everything right. I got shaken, right? Because it really comes down to this. It really comes down to it's either all, and I'm saying nutrition, chiropractic, working out, all the things that we were doing, it's all either completely bullshit
Hmm.
or it was given to us as a gift, as grace, as mercy in order to prepare us for what was coming.
Yes.
That's the only place I can get to with it. I'm overly logical with things and I just have to boil it down to a black and white solution. It's either bullshit and none of it matters and it didn't do anything for doing all those things, or those were a gift for us. And I obviously fall in this camp over here because I do believe that life happens and unfolds for us and not to us.
Yes.
So that was really tough to work through, right? It was tough to work through because, as I mentioned with COVID, everything turned to symptoms. Everything was temperatures and taste and smell and all the things, right? And we were so the global shift went from anything that we thought was vitalism into hardcore mechanism and germ theory and all of that. And so that rattled me as well. That was a hard thing to do as well. But, at the end of the day, that's what we have our philosophy for. When you get into the philosophy of chiropractic and you mix it with the science and you mix it with the art and you mix it with the testimonials, right, of these people that have came into me for years and decades and have got better over all kinds of things that aren't chiropractic things at all, right? They're just intelligence being reconnected with the tissue that created them. Then you realize that this is a gift, right? This was given to us to help us walk through a hard time, just like we're there for all of our practice members to help them walk through hard times. And the expression of how this turned out, I don't like, right? I want to be very judgmental on it. I want to be very selfish on it. And we tried, right? And I know that helped, because if we were studying sickness and disease and only moved in that direction, that was it. But we went the other direction. We went for the expression of life. And I think it was in the chiropractic philosophy that grounded me to walk through this, between the basics of the chiropractic philosophy, lasting purpose mindset, being the dynamic essential. I mean, all of these things that are so cliche, when push comes to shove, they're the nuts and bolts, right? They're the things, the mantras that we practice. It's breath work. I mean, all of it is so important. And I just think that I don't want to think about where I would be without walking through all of that, not just the people in the community, but the actual work that the community does, right? The mindset, the approach, the unconditional love.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it does come down to which narrative do you want to live? What perspective, what reality? And we all have that choice. And it even becomes the question of, how do you want to live your life? None of us know the outcome. So how do you want to live, not knowing the outcome? Even if, how do you want to live that present time consciousness? And Denise always does that so well, of how she chose to live was vibrantly, brilliantly. None of us know that outcome, so why not live well? Why not live with health? Why not live with all of those beautiful endorphins after a workout? Why not live really tasting whole good foods? Why not live with this rhythm of breathing in and breathing out? Like, at the end, will it cure us? Will it fix us? But will we live well in the moment?
You're saying exactly what I said earlier. It's the function of the spirituality, not the nature of the spirituality that we're interested in, right? You're saying it is the function, it's the expression of life that I want to live to the fullest, not necessarily what it means in that, but it's the fact that we can do it and that we can express it. And I think that is the chiropractic philosophy really at its core, right? About having abundance and having the availability to get after it and do what you want to do in life, rather than just, can I make it through? You know what I mean?
Right.
And do me versus for me. But it's a cliche, right? Because YOLO is such a cliche. And okay, yeah, YOLO. All right, you're drinking, your coffee with stevia, YOLO. It's like we boil it down to these things that are so mundane. But the big picture is you only live once. Right?
Yeah.
What was crazy to me, and I don't know if this is where you're going with this, but I spoke at Palmer a couple of years ago, and you drive around there on the campus and you just look at everything named after him, right? Which is so great. And it's like the legacy that dude left, the legacy that we just celebrated the 60th anniversary of Dynamic Essentials 2 weeks ago. And the legacy that Dr. Sid left, the legacy that these guys left, not out of ego, but out of servanthood, right? Of like, we're going to make humanity better because we're going to serve. And is there success and of course there's abundance that comes with that, right? Because your vision is bigger than it. It's not, can I make enough to pay the bills? It's, can we heal the world? And I think that's one of my key things right now that I'm really focused on is, at the end of Joseph's story in Genesis, it's 50-20, and he's revealing to his brothers who he is. And his brothers are taken back at how much love and grace he showed them, And he's like, but we beat you and we tore up your coat and we told dad you were dead and we sold you to slaves. And then all this other stuff happened, right? And he said, yeah, he goes, what the enemy meant for evil, God will use for good so that we could heal a nation. I think like if there's not any better charge to put on my life, and I would pass it on to every single person that gets to listen to this, is use your experiences, use your life, use your encounters that you've had with people and the struggles that you've gone through, not as a negative to be a victim in your story, but use it as a catalyst, as a driving force to make the world better, right? To make humanity a better place because you're in it. Sigafus used to say, is your life better because of my presence in it? It's something like that, right? Or
Yeah.
do I create a drain on you, or do I actually add value to your life? And what is my value? And that all comes from inside. Like, I have to know that what I walked through with Denise is, while it was incredibly hard and challenging and horrible, there was also a lot of beauty in it. There's a lot of lessons. And there's a lot of lessons that, I would selfishly trade her back to not teach other people that.
Right.
And we tried, right? So there was more lessons that came from the trying and the doing. But now we get to go forward and, we have to YOLO, right? And
Yeah.
how it goes.
And it is that thought. I think sometimes we want to look back, like even with our children growing up. Luca turned 15 yesterday. If I had known that he would grow up so fast, I would have. For Joseph, like his brother's saying, if we had known you were going to become this powerful dude, we would have been nicer to you.
Yeah.
And that thing of what if we live in that present time consciousness of acting as if this is a big vision. We are healing the world. Dr. Stu Bittman always says being kind to ourselves for what has been and then being the best version. We can start right now,
Yes.
that we can in this moment choose to build that legacy. We can choose in this moment to YOLO because whatever has been, and only looking back, like you said, to have those lessons that were meant for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And without them throwing Joseph in the pit and creating the lie and all of that, he wouldn't have been where he is at. And probably, from what it seems like when I read it, the whole Middle East region would have starved of the famine. And there's a lesson in that as well. It's what we've been talking about this whole time, right? Is it really just comes down to removing judgment. I was talking to Lucy the other night, and she was asking me something about the Garden of Eden, and Lucy's 9, and just something about the fall and, something she'd heard in school. And I just, very simply, it was like, man, because we chose to eat the apple or the fruit from the knowledge of good and evil. If we can discern good and evil, then we gained the ability to have judgment, right? And through the ability of gaining judgment, we are judged.
Mm.
And that's interesting. So I think when we boil all of this stuff down, chasing symptoms and removing symptoms and adjusting for symptoms is our judgment of what Innate is doing. And stepping back from that and understanding that there's joy that comes from knowing Innate will always and only make the best choice. The best choice in Denise, for some reason, that altered physiology was to produce tumor. And I don't understand it. I don't know why it shifted or why it wanted to. I've got a lot of good theories, and I've spent 5 years researching that, trying to understand that. But at the end of the day, that's what Innate needed to do to alter her physiology. And I think I'm at a spot where I'm thankful for that, because if whatever was disrupting her body so much that the result had to be an altered state of metabolism, probably would have taken her out a lot faster. So the fact that we manifested into stage 4 colon cancer that metastasized to the lungs, the liver, the ovaries, and wherever else that we didn't know at the end, right? It's really hard to say, but kind of thank God for the innate intelligence that made those so we had more time with her,
Absolutely.
And there's something raw and beautiful about that I believe is truth through my philosophy in chiropractic, through my philosophy in the body and the understanding of innate intelligence.
Amen. You gave a beautiful charge to everyone listening. I think catalyst is such an important word when we think about it in a scientific term, but when we think about it in that spiritual, mental way of what could destroy us, break us down, deteriorate us. Like if we were looking at a chemical process and we put in the catalyst, I'm sure that chaos, it would look like, depending on what it was, because I'm not necessarily a chemist, but it would
No,
look
you're
like
right.
chaos. But that catalyst would be what was necessary for then that transformation, that transfiguration.
Agent change.
Yeah, an agent of change. This is your mission, should you
This is
choose
it.
to accept it.
Yeah, right. It's an agent of change. That's what we get to be. That is that catalyst. You're right. It would look very volatile and very messy until the process is done, and then something's different. It's a beautiful cocoon analogy.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you for sharing all of this. I know that we could talk all day, and I'm sure that we will have follow-up episodes as we keep going because I just want to mine your brain for all of your stories and all of your lessons and things. So I'm sure you will be a repeat guest. And I just thank you for just how willing you are to share and to open your heart because I know you don't have to. And so I appreciate it that you do.
Well, I do feel like it's the charge, right? It is the challenge. Years ago, I got a tattoo on my chest that says "Heed the call," and that just means like the call of your life is going to be hard. It's going to be challenging. We shouldn't have an easy call. We shouldn't have a call to live on a boat and whatever. Like our call should scare us. And I think the word heed that goes along with that is an empowering word that gives reverence to the duty that's ahead of us. And so I would tell everybody to heed the call.
Yes, and that's my charge from when I was 17 and was given a book by one of our family friends. And in it was a paragraph, a phrase where the author said, God gives his stories to people who will tell them. So I've taken that as if God's given me a story, I'm responsible.
That's right.
I'm responsible to tell it, which is that thing of heed the call, tell the story.
That's right. Well, you're doing it here, and I'm deeply proud of you. And I'm honored to be number 33.
33.
We joked about it when it started, and when the invitation came to me, and the fact that you held the spot for me, I appreciate that.
Well, it's my pleasure. And I will tell everybody if you honestly want the other half, go listen to episode 1 because episode 1 is Denise. So
Yeah.
go listen to her words of wisdom. We released it April 1st. So that was the end of March where she had just this beautiful space of time where she could share with us, and she chose to do it. So go listen to the other half, listen to episode 1, and we'll have more stories for you next time.
Love and appreciate you. Thank you for having me.
Love and appreciate you too. Thanks.